Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Run in the Paint recap. Today is Wednesday, April 29th. I'm Miles going solo once again here from the Run in the Paint podcast after another terrific night of NBA playoff basketball. We had the San Antonio Spurs winning their first playoff series in 9 years. The Philadelphia 76ers going to Boston and staying alive with an impressive second half performance, and then a pivotal win for the New York Knicks in their game 5. So we're going to dive deep into all those games right now. As always, make sure to check the description down below if you want to skip ahead to hear me talk about any of those games, and leave a like on the video if you enjoy these recap videos, and leave a comment with your thoughts about all the games as well. It's always a treat to hear your guys' thoughts on what is going on. But let's get into the action from last night, starting off with that game 5 in Boston between the Sixers and the Celtics. Felt like this was going to be an inevitable game here where the Celtics were just going to roll over the Sixers like they did in game 4. They were on fire in that game. We saw them also do it in game 1 where they were on fire from three-point range. They were getting it, going defensively as well. And you just thought that, this was going to be one of those series where after their little hiccup in game 2, a close win in game 3, that they would just take care of business in 5. And it looked like it was going to be that way early. But the Sixers, man, gave them credit. They fought hard. They played terrific on both ends of the floor. Another game where Joel Embiid returned to the floor, his second game back from the appendectomy, and he had a big-time performance, leading the way as the Sixers stayed alive by defeating the Celtics 113-97 in Game 5. This was a terrific performance by Philadelphia. It was, kind of reminiscent of that Game 2 win where Boston really struggled from 3. They shot 11 of 39 from downtown, 28%. And the Sixers hit a lot of threes. They were 15 for 42 from outside, 36%. They actually shot more threes than Boston, which I can't imagine has happened a whole lot of times this season. And the biggest reason, you got to start with that big man in the middle, Joel Embiid, who heading into this series, the question was going to be, is he going to be available at any point in this series? And if he is he healthy enough to make that big of a difference, on the floor to try and take care of business and make this series competitive? Game 4, you saw that he was okay, but, it was only his first game back. Didn't expect a whole lot from him in that game. This game, he started out struggling, started settling for shots on the perimeter. They weren't falling down. He was 0 for 5 from 3 in this game, all in the first half. But at halftime, he made the adjustment. He saw that his threes were not going in. He was taking it to the post in the mid-range area, getting to the free throw line like we always see him doing, making terrific passes out of handoffs, double-team situations. And he was phenomenal. He finished with 33 points and 8 assists, 12 for 23 from the field. And 18 of those points came in the second half, 10 of them in the third quarter. And he was the best player on the floor. And Joel Embiid, this was just a vintage game from Embiid. I mean, some of the shots he was making, it reminds you why, when he is healthy, or at least some sort of healthy version of himself, why he is such a special player out there, because he's such a big guy. Let me find his. I'm actually curious his exact listings out there on the floor, but he is such a big body and a big presence on the floor at that center position. But he's got some of the softest, some of the best touch in the mid-range area that you've ever seen from a big guy. And that's why he's such a special offensive player. Joel Embiid, let's see, 7 feet tall, 270 pounds, with the touch of, a soft blank. I don't know. He's got super soft hands, and he's able to finish things so well. I know he's certainly a polarizing player, but games like this remind you of why he's so special. Tyrese Maxey had a nice game, 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. Had some nice big finishes to the basket. But the big X factor in this game, which the Sixers were going to need down the stretch here in the second half, Quentin Grimes, man. Quentin Grimes, the former Knick and the Sixer who, started off the year on fire off the bench, really played well in the second half of this game. He finished the game with 18 points, hit 4 3-pointers, got fouled a few times on some threes, had some terrific defensive plays. The one that stood out was the one play where he essentially guarded Jaylen Brown one-on-one for an entire possession, deflected the ball back into the backcourt and forced Jaylen Brown into a, not a good shot at the end of the shot clock. And he was just phenomenal in this game. Paul George had another big one, 16, 9, and 7. At this point in Paul George's career, these are the type of games where you'd say this is a big game for Paul George, and he shoots the ball well, hitting 4 threes. They got a big time corner 3 from Andre Drummond, continues to knock down threes here in the postseason. 3 3-pointers from VJ Edgecombe, 7 rebounds for him. It was just really impressive to see the Sixers get this done when not a whole, I don't know how many people were expecting them to come in and win this game. And they took care of business. I mean, again, the Celtics were in position to have this series won at home for all the shooting struggles that they had through, the first few quarters. They had a 13-point lead in the first half, and they had an 8-point advantage with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter before Drummond made that corner 3. And from that point on, the Sixers outscored the Celtics 43-19 in a 15-minute span. Boston in the fourth quarter only put up 11 points, and they shot 3 for 22 from the field. They missed 4 free throws. It was a disaster of a fourth quarter for Boston at home. And these are the games that make you worry. It's kind of interesting in the Eastern Conference where the whole season we've been saying it's been wide open. Who's going to be able to come out of the Eastern Conference to represent them going to the NBA Finals? But Boston is the clear team that, because they have the championship experience for their players, they get Jason Tatum back. Jaylen Brown's having an incredible season. That, of course, they're the favorite. But we've seen in this first round that every single team in the Eastern Conference, their flaws have been showcased very, heavily at times in this first round. So you look and see, Boston, they've now had 2 games out of 5 here where their shots from 3 have not gone down, and they have not been able to, really be competitive at the end of the game. It ends up being, a 16-point differential with with a couple minutes of garbage time at the end there. And, it's just a little scary because we've seen this from Boston the last several years. Even in their championship year, they had a few games in that run where, when they weren't making shots, it just wasn't going that well for them. And, the 2024 championship really saved them from being a team that we only know for living and dying by the 3, because we've seen it happen in the Joe Mazzulla era. In the first year, that's exactly what happened. Last year, it happened in the New York Knicks series in the second round, and that's why they got down 2-0 and ended up losing the series. So, it's just crazy, and it's something that I think definitely needs to be looked at, for Boston going forward. Again, these other teams, you look at the top of the Eastern Conference, Detroit's obviously down 3-1. We'll get to their game. They could, be out of this tonight, incredibly. Boston, if their threes aren't going in, they haven't shown the ability this season with this iteration of the team in this series to win games when their shots aren't going down. New York had a great win. We'll get to them later, but they struggle defensively in games 2 and 3. Of course, Cleveland's in a dogfight with Toronto because of the turnovers that the backcourt has had and their perimeter defense. And then you have all the lower end teams that aren't considered to be contending teams. So I think that's just something interesting to note as the series goes forward here. I think the one player that I continue to look at here and question, if we should be worried about him for the Boston Celtics title chances this season, is Mr. Derek White, who has been a terrific all-around player for the Celtics since, being acquired by them now over 4 years ago, which is crazy, because of his incredible ability to be an elite defender and his improved volume 3-point shooting. The guy will take 8 to 9 threes a game. And before, he would make them at a 39-40% clip. But throughout this entire season, he has struggled. This has been the least efficient season of his career from the field, shooting 39% from the field, under 33% from downtown on 8 attempts a game. And so far, he has struggled mightily shooting the ball in this series. After this game, where Derek White in 36 minutes has 6 points, 2 for 8 from the field, 0 for 4 from downtown. Derek White is now 7 for 33 from downtown in this series. 21%. Not good. Not good at all. I mean, that's crazy. He's taking 6.6 threes a game and making 1.4. That's just not going to work later on in the playoffs. And Derek White is a just great player. Again, this could easily be a situation where in later rounds or later games this series, he could have a crazy game, and we're like, oh boy. It was a good thing he got his cold shooting games out of the way in the first round, so now we can have it later. But this is a long sample size of a series where an important player for them on both ends of the floor is not contributing on the offensive end. And it's major. Again, the guy takes a ton of threes in every game. So that's something I would definitely be concerned with going forward. But for the Celtics overall as a team, I wouldn't be too worried. Again, normally their shots go down, they're an amazing 3-point shooting team. They've been a historically great 3-point shooting team. If the shots go down, we've seen in this series, they take care of business. But the problem is in this game, they weren't defending the three super well either. With George, Edgecombe, Maxey, and Grimes all knocking down 3 to 4 3-pointers in this game. And then you have Joel Embiid, who is a tough matchup in this series because you have Joel Embiid going up against Nimish Keita, who's obviously had a terrific year and he's a good defender, but it's Joel Embiid versus Keita and Nick Vucevic and Luka Garza. Like, Embiid should dominate this matchup, and I expect him to do it again in Game 6. The question is, can they get this production from Maxey, George, Edgecombe again, Grimes, potentially? Can they get a game from Kelly Oubre as they head back home to Philadelphia for Game 6, a place where they haven't been able to win a game yet in this series? They'll have a great chance to do that and try to force a Game 7 back in Boston. Well, Philadelphia getting the Game 5 victory, 113-97 in Boston to keep their season alive. Moving on to the most highly anticipated game of the night, the Game 5 of Atlanta and New York, with those two teams being tied up at 2 games apiece. The Game 5, when it's a 2-2 series, is always the most important game of the series. And New York came out second straight game and absolutely dominated from the jump. A 29-point victory, 126-97 to take the 3-2 series lead on the Atlanta Hawks. And this masterful performance from Jalen Brunson, especially in the second half and the fourth quarter, to really blow the game open. But to start the game, I thought that Karl-Anthony Towns once again set the tone with his aggressiveness of attacking the paint and going at defenders. Like, this is a game, Towns only took 7 shots in this game, but I thought he was very aggressive in this game and did a great job of making his teammates better. I thought he had a great game. Once again, OG was huge. They got, enough from Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges throughout this game, and they got tremendous contributions off the bench from a lot of different players. Looking at Mitchell Robinson on the glass, Jordan Clarkson had some big buckets, and Jose Alvarado with 12 points in less than 12 minutes. Huge bonus for the New York Knicks, especially when they're playing in front of their fans at Madison Square Garden, because Jose Alvarado, definitely a player that can electrify that home crowd. On the Atlanta side of things, this was a matchup in this particular game where, going into it, I said, last night, I said they needed to get those good performances from CJ McCollum like he had to begin the series. They needed a breakout game from Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they needed Jalen Johnson to have his best games of the series. None of those things happened. Johnson was fine, 18, 10, and 6. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was fine, 16 points, 4 threes. CJ McCollum, bad. He had 6 points in this game, 3 for 10 from the field, 4 turnovers. Just not the impact at all that the Hawks needed from him. And I thought Jonathan Kuminga, I don't think had a good game. I thought, he had 13 points, but I didn't like the shots that he was taking. It felt like he was getting a little too happy, taking jump shots in the mid-range and from 3. Dyson Daniels had a good offensive game, 17 points and 5 assists. But look, you're going to live with Dyson Daniels scoring 17 points. If he's taking 4 threes and he makes 2 of them, so what? Like, you live with him beating you scoring wise. You lose if CJ McCollum puts up 30 like he did to begin the series. If Jalen Johnson puts up 20-point triple doubles like he has all season. If Nickeil Alexander-Walker has 20-point games, knocking down threes and playing defense like he has all season. New York, for 2 straight games, has had a tremendous focus defending that team. And Atlanta has also struggled from 3-point range these last 2 games, which, has reverted back to, the mean here over games 4 and 5. So New York they had this, 12 to 18 point edge really the whole game. It felt like after the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. And then Jalen Brunson took over. He scored 10 straight points for them in the beginning of the period, 14 overall in the fourth quarter, with just incredible isolation moves. It didn't matter who was guarding him. The footwork of that guy is unbelievable. We've seen it for all of his years with the New York Knicks in the playoffs, even his last year with Dallas in the playoffs. We saw him do this. It finishes with 39 points, 8 assists on 15 of 23 shooting, and the difficulty of shots that he was taking. I mean, again, just super impressive stuff and a huge win for New York. Again, this was such a big game for them after they had trailed 2-1. People, were worrying about them. The sky was falling a little bit in Manhattan, but New York was able to win these last 2 games in pretty convincing fashion here. And now I think if you're a Knicks fan, you have to feel great about their chances in this series. And I think to close them out in 6 games, I believe that's what I had predicted them to do on this podcast. Let me go find overall our entire predictions. 3 of us went with the Knicks in 6. Me, Joey, and Ben. Nick went with New York in 7. So all that stuff is still in play, but I feel great about their chances to take care of business on the road and try to advance to the second round where they would play the winner of Boston versus Philadelphia. But New York, just an impressive performance. Again, domination on both ends of the floor. Offensively, as a team, they shot 57% from the field, 42 from 3, 11 for 26. They doubled the free throws of Atlanta, so they were being physical, attacking the basket, and they out-rebounded Atlanta by 21. Just completely obliterated Atlanta in all facets of this game, and the Hawks are going to need a better performance, obviously, if they want, a chance to keep their season alive here. Maybe you see them in Game 6 at home play a different couple of wild cards. There's a guy like Buddy Hield that's just been on the Hawks bench that came in, made a few buckets late in garbage time that could maybe give them a spark. I mean, again, this is a Hawks team. They've struggled from 3 the last 2 games. Buddy Hield's a great 3-point shooter. He can be hot and cold, but he's one of a trustworthy 3-point shooter in NBA history. Had some big games for Golden State in the playoffs last year, but not in the rotation at all. They've got nothing, it feels like, from Corey Kispert, nothing really from Gabe Vincent, aside from like 1 or 2 threes a game. So I feel like in Game 6, you got to go to something. Maybe you try out the former number 1 pick, Zachary Reese-Joshe. I think you're going to have to try things if it's not going your way early in Game 6, but of course, still have a little bit until we get to that point. But again, New York, big-time impressive victory, 29-point victory against Atlanta in Game 5 to take the 3-2 series lead. Finally, in San Antonio, the Spurs clinched their first playoff series victory in 9 years since 2017 by defeating the Portland Trailblazers in Game 5, 114-95. As San Antonio won 3 straight games in pretty convincing fashion with big-time second halves in Portland in the last 2 games. And this game, dominant first half, absolutely dominant from the very beginning. Didn't really allow the Blazers to even think they had a real chance in the early goings. They're taking an early double-digit lead over the first couple of minutes. Julian Champagnie was on fire from 3. I believe he hit 4 threes in the first quarter of that game. And then throughout the second quarter, they were just raining threes and forcing a bunch of turnovers for Portland and just scoring off them and not allowing Portland to get a rhythm offensively. Another game where Portland just really struggles to shoot the ball on pretty good looks. But Portland, I mean, it's just rough. They shot 11 for 47 from deep. And again, they just don't have the shooting on this team, which is why I'm excited to see what they do going forward, because they're going to try to acquire some shooting to try to alleviate this problem. And of course, Damian Lillard is coming back for this team. But you got to give Portland credit here. San Antonio was up by 27 points near the final couple minutes of the first half. Portland ended the half on a 7-0 run to get it back to 20. And like midway through the fourth quarter, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Portland had cut that lead down to single digits, down to 9 with 8 minutes to go here. They were not quitting at all. Denny Avdia was still in attack mode, getting to the basket. They were getting, some slight performance, some solid buckets, from a lot of different players. Sidi Sissoko, who was on the bench for the whole series, came in and provided a nice spark for them in the second half. Robert Williams, another good game. But overall, they just didn't have the offense to match what San Antonio was able to get from Champagnie in the first quarter, Wemby throughout the game with unbelievable blocks. He had 6 blocks in this game. Some of them were ridiculous down the stretch in the fourth quarter when the Spurs started to pull away. But the Spurs started to pull away in the fourth quarter after Portland had it down to 9 because they got it to one of their players. They're one of the few players on this team that already had prior playoff experience in De'Aaron Fox. Fox, not a whole lot of playoff experience with Sacramento, just the one series 3 years ago. But he is a proven scorer. And for the second straight game, he showed up when his team needed him to. He was amazing in game 4 on the road over the weekend. And here in this game in game 5, made just some tough buckets, step back threes, left, obviously he's a lefty, but scoop shot, rainbow layups right at the basket. He was phenomenal in this game when the Spurs needed him to. Stephon Castle had 15 points, but up and down game for him. He had 7 turnovers and he ended up fouling out. Dylan Harper, rookie, another big game for him. He's going to be such a special player once he starts getting more minutes, and this experience for him is going to be huge. But yeah, San Antonio, definitely a good learning experience in this first round, and definitely a good test for them to start out by playing this pesky Trailblazers team. I mean, the Blazers definitely made the Spurs earn it at different times. Although at the end of this, you're going to see that the Spurs won in 5 games, and the 4 victories were all by double digits. Portland made them earn it. With the 2 15-point advantages that they had at home in games 3 and 4, no Wemby for games 2 and 3, for most of game 2, and then for all of game 3, where Portland won game 2 and were in a great position to win game 3, great position to win game 4 before giving it up in the second half. And San Antonio was just able to learn a lot about themselves. Now, I'm excited to see what happens in the next round, depending on who advances between Minnesota or if Denver can come back from down 3-1 in that series, how San Antonio is able to adjust to playing a team with more experience, more talent, and just just has more experience being in those situations. But great test in the first round for San Antonio. It's a big time accomplishment for that team. Advancing to the second round again, first time in 9 years, and heading into the season, most of the thoughts were like, all right, maybe the Spurs will sneak into a 7 seed, maybe where Portland was at this season, 6 seed, to get that playoff experience. And if they had won a playoff series, that's a successful season. But now, of course, they were so good in the regular season with 62 wins. They've raised the expectations, and I think a lot of people, myself included, think that they can be a legitimate threat to win the entire thing this season, to win the title and knock off the Thunder. But this was a great test. Still a young team, still thinks that they can clean up. Again, this is a Portland team that only had 1 player score over 12 points in Denny Avdia, and you allowed them to get back in the game, and make this a 9-point game in the fourth quarter when they shot awful from the field. They had a horrible offensive game, but you gave them like there's some things to still learn from it as a young team going through the playoffs for the first time together. But good job. They passed their first test. We'll see who they have to face in round 2 of the playoffs. As for the Portland Trailblazers, you talk about a team that wasn't expected to get to this point. This Portland Trailblazers team had a very strong year. You think about the fact that, again, they've been through this rebuild for the last, few years, ever since they originally traded Dame Lillard, and then, him coming back last offseason. But, getting these young players, getting Denny Avdia from, the trade from Washington, drafting the young guys like Klingon, Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and acquiring Tamani Kamara, just building up all these players. And it's really cool to see a team like this get to this point, especially with the adversity they had from the very beginning of the season. You remember going into the season, Chauncey Billups was their head coach before the arrest for the betting. 1 game into the season, Tiago Splitter has to take over. The last month or so, we've been hearing rumors that Portland has just flat out been interviewing other coaches during the series while Tiago Splitter is coaching, that their owner has been super cheap, not sending 2-way players on the road for these playoff games, not putting out t-shirts for the fans because it's too much money. That, I think, is crazy. And it's not something that I like hearing at all for a team that I'm a fan of. I really like what this Portland Trailblazers team looked like heading into the season. I didn't think they were going to end up being a playoff team, but definitely a team that could fight for a play-in. But I do not like that that's kind of the situation that they're going in, where the perception from the outside is that their owners are very cheap. So that's something that they're going to probably have to overcome, going forward. But Portland, as far as their team goes, they this season, I mean, they won 42 games, won the first playing game on the road in Phoenix to advance to the playoffs to play against a Spurs team that had a great regular season, and they put up a great fight, against them, even though, again, it was a 5-game series and most of the wins were by double digits. They made the Spurs earn it, and their young guys got terrific playoff experience. Denny Abdia, all-star player, one of the candidates for most improved player, had an incredible year leading the way, becoming the face of that Trailblazers team. Big seasons from Shaedon Sharpe in the regular season. Scoot Henderson had his moments in the playoffs. Tamani Kamara had a big jump up, bounce back year for the veteran Jeremy Grant. Drew Holiday had some big games, in this run. A nice full season of health from Robert Williams, who's might now be re-signed by that team after thought it was going to be a sure thing that they were going to look to trade him. But this is a team that I'm excited to see how they look going forward. Of course, with Damian Lillard coming back next year, I'm very curious to see how they fit him in or what they end up doing with this roster, because again, they are in a loaded Western Conference. You do have to question if this was their ceiling. I personally don't think so, because I think that they are a very good defensive team that, again, they have Damian Lillard on their bench, who, we know who Damian Lillard is. He's one of the best all-time three-point shooters in the game. Of course, coming back from the Achilles, we'll see how he looks. But he's definitely still going to be able to shoot the ball and can definitely help that Portland Trailblazer team out. The question, though, is going to be what they end up doing with all their guards, because even this year, like we saw, Drew Holiday was the starter for, basically the whole season because of the veteran presence in the defense. Shaedon Sharpe was the starting 2 guard, averaging 21 points a game. He had a tremendous season this year until he got injured, played limited minutes in this playoff series, and Scoot Henderson stepped up and played well. And now you have Dame Lillard coming back. You've got 4 legitimate, scoring guards here that all deserve to play starter level minutes. So how are they going to manage that? Who's going to be the coach next year to manage all that? Will it be Tiago Splitter? Will it be someone else on the market? We shall see. They still have a couple more seasons of Jeremy Grant's big contract. Drew Holiday, he still has his big contract. But overall, I'm a big fan of running this team back with Damian Lillard and just seeing what you have. I mean, you still have super young players that can definitely still get better. Denny Abdia extension eligible. He's going to receive a big extension after being an all-star, all-NBA caliber player. We'll see if they give an extension to Scoot Henderson. We'll see how much that is going to be worth, or if they want to see him prove himself a little bit more. Scoot Henderson had, again, his season was a little bit inconsistent because he missed so much of it due to injury. But overall, this was his most efficient season of his career. And in the playoffs, we saw him have a couple of huge games. I mean, the first 3 games of the series, he put up 18 points in game 1 on 7 of 11 shooting, 31 in the game 2 victory where he looked amazing. And then game 3 at home had 21 points. He hit 10 3-pointers in games 2 and 3 combined. But then in game 4, he put up a stinker. He had 0 points, 0 for 7 from the field, and he put up 5 points, only played 17 minutes in this game just because he just didn't have an impact out there. So hot and cold player, which is what you expect to see from still a super young point guard at, 22 years old now at this point, 21 years old. So, we'll see what they end up doing with their guards. But again, I think I'm a fan of just seeing what happens going forward. Run this team back, see how Dame, can help your team. And if you want to make any moves trading away some of these guards while their value is maybe at their highest, then you do it. You could do it during the season. Maybe if you think Scoot Henderson's your guy going forward, then you move on from Shaedon Sharpe when he still has years on his deal after he had a 21 point per game season. I think there's a lot of avenues to this team getting better, but I'm just excited to see what Damian Lillard does coming back next year to Portland and who ends up being their head coach. And hopefully they can, what the stigma that, their ownership is, cheap as dirt. Hopefully that can get thrown to the wayside. But overall, super successful season for the Portland Trailblazers. But unfortunately, they're headed off to Cancun to join the Phoenix Suns after they have both been eliminated from the first round. Tonight, we've got a bunch of super pivotal game fives coming up around the association, starting off at 7 o'clock on Prime Video. Game 5 of the Magic Pistons series, with the top seed in the East Pistons one loss away from their season coming to an end just like that. Orlando trying to win their first playoff series in 16 years, and they could do it by knocking off the top seed in the East. It's absolutely incredible. I think talked about it yesterday on the recap of Game 4 and really this whole series. Orlando has dominated the series besides the third quarter of Game 2. Detroit needs Jalen Duren to not be outplayed by Wendell Carter Jr. He actually needs to play better than just 12 points per game. He needs to play like an all-star, and they need some wild card to get hot from three. Whether that's Duncan Robinson, whether that's Tobias Harris, whether that's, I don't know, Kevin Huerter, Dennis Jenkins, Karis LeVert, Javonte Green. They need someone to help give them an offensive boost. Or if not, you can't allow the Orlando Magic starting lineup to all have a positive impact on the game. Because again, if 3, 4, 5 of them have it going, it's going to be tough to beat that team when you don't have the power to match that on your team on the offensive end. Then at 7:30 on ESPN, the pivotal Game 5 between the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, with the series tied at 2 games apiece. Cavs took the first 2 at home. Raptors responded by winning back-to-back on their home floor. So, for those who say a series doesn't start until the road team wins, this one still hasn't started yet. I'm excited to see how these two teams come out, especially the Cleveland Cavaliers after blowing the opportunity at the end of Game 4. Both of those teams really, really struggled offensively. So we'll see if this is a game where one team starts to get super hot and that they start to get back to shooting super well. Most you'd think Cleveland, because they're such an offensive juggernaut team, but you never know what could happen. The playoffs are funny. We saw that in Game 3 where the Raptors made their first 5 threes, made their last 8 threes, shot like 61% from 3 in that game. But super big game. Lots of pressure for Cleveland to win this game. You do not want to go back to Toronto down 3-2, having lost the last 3 games. I'm a Cavs fan. They certainly need to, win this game, and you'd hope that they can do it in convincing fashion, but any way to get a win, they need to try and do it. The Raptors are going to be super confident heading into this game. Cleveland, they've got some fans worried here, about their series. I think that they're going to be fine, but overall, they need to come out and show that they can, really take control and win this series over the next few games. But then final game, 10 p.m. on ESPN, Game 5 between the Rockets and the Lakers, with LA trying to close the series. Don't want to keep playing with their food from Houston. But the Rockets, after the impressive blowout win in Game 4, you never know. I was talking about it on the last few pods, how they have some life now. They finally have the confidence that they can beat that Lakers team. So you want to make sure that you don't give them any more life. But that's going to be it for me as far as the games. I know that earlier on Monday, Shams reported the new lottery rules that's going to start to be implemented next season. I've got my opinions on it, but I'll save it for when we have more people, more voices to talk about it with Ben and Joey, and if Nick can come on as well. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe for more NBA playoff content. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.